Let's talk about building a profitable business. If you're watching this series, you likely want to build a business that makes money and is able to pay yourself, right? Like, this is why we're doing this. And I wanted to talk about profitable business models because that is so important. I likely don't have to tell you this, but being a business owner, being an entrepreneur, especially if it's your first time, it's going to be hard. And so you don't want to make things more difficult than they need to be. And I used to always pride myself on being perseverant. Like in school, I would always choose the hardest subjects because I don't know why, but I would just make myself, like, make life more difficult for myself. And looking back now, like, I really wish I worked smarter versus harder. And so this is my rallying cry to you to pick a good business model and make sure you pick something that is profitable because you can get all the experience, you can learn, basically get your crash course MBA by being an entrepreneur. And then you can invest the profits and do like a sexier business later. But especially if you're a first time founder and you're watching this, I highly encourage you to pick a good business model because the wind will just be in your sails and life will just be so much easier, even though being a business owner is not easy. But you know what I mean? Like, we want to try to make your life as easy as possible and we want to be strategic about this. Let's go back to your intentions, right? Like, what does success mean to you? Why are you doing this? I think a lot of times people will remember their intentions, which are typically to make some more income for themselves, do something where they can live life, where they can travel, where they can see their friends, have work-life balance, and like make more money, right? That's typically why people want to be an entrepreneur. But then they kind of get lost up and they try to have a sexy business. I want to give you an example. So I would say that Elon Musk is a one in a multi-billion type of person entrepreneur. He is very interesting and he's done some interesting things, quite a character, but let's look at what he's done. He's built some really incredible businesses and they're arguably quite sexy, right? Like Tesla electric cars, quite cool. Or SpaceX trying to go to Mars, building spaceships, like that's pretty cool. But those two businesses are so hard to start. He's one of those people where you look at him and you're like, yeah, you're a one in a lifetime type of entrepreneur. For most people, that is not the case. And if you're watching this and you're a once in a lifetime entrepreneur, hats off to you, would still love to support you. But for most of us, we want to have work-life balance. And Elon talks a lot about how he doesn't have work-life balance. He just works. And that's okay and that works for him. But I think if you're watching this, you want to have a sustainable lifestyle where you still are able to connect with your loved ones, have deep, meaningful relationships, travel, like live your life. And so in the world, we need people like Elon, we need people like Jeff Bezos and all this stuff. But for you, if you want to have a nice life where you're able to work, do something you love, and also support yourself, then we need to be strategic and we need to try not to do a sexy business because, like I mentioned, doing a business is hard enough already. So I just want you to be real with yourself and know that maybe sexy for you is literally doing something you love, helping people that you care about, and then being able to live your life. And I think that's beautiful. Having said that, let's go back to all the different ways you can monetize. I walked through 8 different categories, and I'm now going to run you through what I think you should start with, especially if you're watching this and you're a first-time founder. Or even if you're not and you just want to have business on easy mode for a while, this is what I would recommend. Generally, I would recommend a service-based business over physical products or brick and mortar. Just because with a service-based business, you don't need a lot of funding or capital upfront to be able to start it, which is great. Also, you're able to pivot really quickly and without too many consequences. If I started a service-based business and I decided to be a business consultant, let's say, and I test marketing services, I test sales services, and I test product services. And I realize that people don't really like my sales services or my launch services, but people really like my marketing services. And then I can hone in and do all of that. Whereas if I started a skincare brand, let's say, and I invested all of my life savings into R&D and I released 3 different products and people didn't like 2 of them and they only bought 1, I might not make enough money to recoup costs and might have to shut down and would have just lost all my life savings. So obviously this is a very dramatic and worst case scenario type of example, but it just goes to show you that with a service-based business, you don't need a lot of capital or money upfront and you can pivot more easily and with less consequences. So like I talked about, let's go through all the different monetization categories I talked about and which ones I would recommend and which ones I wouldn't. The first one I talked about was digital downloads, and I absolutely recommend this because you can literally just make a digital download. Like you can make a template on Canva, you can make it on Illustrator or Photoshop or whatever your graphic design level looks like. But you could do that and just set up your Etsy shop and it won't cost you that much money. And you can test a bunch of different templates and it's no harm, no foul if no one buys anything. Right? Obviously, we want people to buy stuff, but if you don't make any sales, it's fine. Like you didn't pour your life savings into this. Highly recommend digital downloads. Courses, programs, same thing. You just have to invest some time. You just have to invest some energy and effort. But if no one buys it, no harm, no foul. Same thing with coaching, consulting, and advising because you're trading your time in exchange for your expertise and no harm, no foul too if you don't make your sales goals or whatever because you're not investing your life savings. With an agency business, maybe. So it depends what your goals are and how much revenue and profit you want to be bringing in. If you want to keep your agency small and you want it to be mainly yourself and maybe you have VA, like a virtual assistant or a couple contractors help you do it, then maybe. However, if you want to scale it and have millions and millions of dollars in revenue, I would generally recommend against that unless you really enjoy managing people and you don't want to be working on client work anymore. Because the reality is you're going to have to hire a bunch of people and your job is going to become managing people and not doing the actual work. Just some things to think about. I've had friends scale up their agencies to multi-million dollars and they've just burnt out and they don't like what their business has become. And so that's why agency is a maybe. It's a caveat. When it comes to media business, absolutely. I think it's great. You can just start to build your platform. And I feel like with all the different categories I talked about before, whether you're doing digital downloads or courses or programs or whatever it is, it would serve you to build up your social media presence anyways so that you can funnel and bring in customers. But if you want to build an exclusive media business, go for it. When it comes to a tech company, maybe yes, if you personally have a really strong coding background and or you know someone that does. In my case, I don't have a strong coding background, but my sister does. She studied comp sci. She went to an Ivy League school. She has a master's in comp sci. And so one day, maybe we start a tech company together. That is a caveat. If you have the skill set and you know someone / you could like bring someone in to be your co-founder, I think that would be great. Physical products business, maybe. So if you're super passionate about it, like I've supported hundreds of sustainable fashion brand owners launch a fashion brand. And so that's a physical products business, but you need to be so strategic about it. So with my clients, I always got them to do pre-sales so they didn't have to do inventory up front and all this stuff. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later, but it's a caveat. Like if you're a first-time founder, I would highly recommend you not do this. Like if you're just looking to get side income, highly try to persuade you towards the digital downloads, the courses, or consulting because that is going to be more profitable and then you can make more money for yourself and then you could take profits from that and like invest it in something that you're more passionate about. But maybe if you're really, really passionate about it, you feel like you can solve a problem, you feel like there's a market gap and you are strategic about it and intentional about how you set this up, then I would say, yeah, you could go for it. And then brick and mortar, I would generally advise against this because it's like physical products, but another level with the rent, with the staff you need to pay to open your brick and mortar shop. And if you're doing a restaurant or coffee business or bakery where your products literally expire and go stale, like it's an even more added layer of needing to manage your inventory. So if you really want to do it, we can make it happen, but just know that you are choosing business on hard mode and you need to be so dedicated and so passionate about it to make it happen. Generally recommend you start with a service-based business and then you can always do something else later, right? Like always do something else that you're more passionate about or that's sexier later. And you could be a serial entrepreneur. You don't have to just start one business. You can start multiple businesses once you have the knowledge and the skill sets. The reason why, again, I recommend you start with a service-based business is because you can start it up easily. Like you can easily get a Squarespace site, easily start an Instagram. You also don't need that much money up front. You may just need to pay for a few like tech subscriptions like Squarespace, like QuickBooks, like Notion, Canva, etc. You will have higher profits because you don't need to pay for a manufacturing or like product cost or things like that. And then you also have lower pivot costs. If you want to pivot and try something else, you didn't just spend all your money on this inventory and you're able to move quickly. There's just a little bit more room for error. And trust me, as a first-time founder, you're going to make your fair share of mistakes. And that's how you learn. But if you don't have that much margin and you don't have that much finances to begin with, every single mistake is going to set you back so much. And so that's just why I would recommend a service-based business to begin with. But again, not dissuading you if you want to do a product-based business or a brick and mortar business, but just know that it is going to be harder. And there is that added layer of the financial piece. So just know that. So all this to say, choose wisely. I had a really great mentor sit me down and walk me through this. And that's why I started Recloset, which is my first business doing consulting, because I knew that I needed to make side income. And I also knew that I wanted to do this full time. So I didn't have a lot of room for error, and I wanted to make sure I had good profit margins. And I had a lot of skill sets and expertise that I could monetize. So that's why I did Recloseted. And in the emails, I'm going to be emailing you more candid stories and kind of more horror stories, not to scare you, but just so you're more informed. And so leverage the Notion workbook down below to start to think about what business model you want to do with the intention of going into it to be as profitable as possible, and try to make your life as easy as possible as a business owner and a founder. And don't forget, I mentioned this already, if this is your first business, your goal should be to try to make as much money as possible and also learn as much money as possible. Learning on the go, you want to have as much room for error as possible, which is again why I recommend a service-based business. And you can always take the profits and earnings and you can start a business you're more passionate about later. So that's what I would recommend. Leverage the Notion workbook down below. Make sure you read through my email. And once you've done that, I will see you in the next lesson.